Valley. I'm Roger Royse. I'm the founder of the Royse Law Firm. We're a corporate business and tax firm located in Palo Alto. And today's presentation will be about the intersection of entertainment and technology. Hollywood has met the Silicon Valley, and the entertainment industry has gone high-tech. As the entertainment business depends more and more on advanced solutions, and entrepreneurs develop new technologies to serve the film industry, the film tech community has grown larger and more prominent. We're going to have a one-hour webinar today as our panel of entrepreneurs and media personnel will discuss the future of the film industry, current trends in entertainment technology, and opportunities in the new and growing industry of film tech. So with me today, we have Dana Loberg, who's the co-founder of MovieLaLa.com, and she's also a co-organizer of Silicon Valley FilmTech. MovieLaLa is a movie marketing and data analytics platform for movies. It connects movie fans with the films they're interested in and the movie stars that they love the most. And it provides film studios with a direct way to market their movies to movie fans. Prior to MovieLaLa, Dana provided social media and marketing consulting for startups in Silicon Valley and has also driven online presence and created social media policies for large companies such as Yamaha and Japan tobacco industry. We also have Denise Hewett, founder of Scripted. She started Scripted as a way to empower creators and screenwriters to connect them directly with their audiences. She's a seasoned television and digital producer who has worked on Ugly Betty, Sex and the City 2, and also has been at MTV and an executive producer at Endemol. She is previously director of sales and marketing at the famed nightclub The Box, has a degree in clothing and culture from Gallatin at NYU. Joining us later will be Lucas Shaw, the media reporter from Bloomberg, LA. He's an entertainment and media reporter for Bloomberg based in Los Angeles. He writes about television, music, and digital media for one of the largest news organizations in the world. Previous to that, he was at The Wrap, where he wrote about film and digital media. So I just want to let the audience know that this webinar is really the progeny of the group Silicon Valley FilmTech, which has a meetup. If you're not a member of the meetup, I'd encourage you to join. And just to make a couple of announcements, where the FilmTech meetup has done several events. We've had live events. We've had some social events. This is the first one with content. We're actually in the process of putting together an event that will, for the Carmel International Film Festival in October. We expect to be there demoing a lot of new film tech products at the film festival. So make sure you log on and watch for that. If you're tweeting today, use hashtag SVFilmTech. And finally, I want to let people know that this webinar is part of a series that we have here at Royse Law Firm. And you will find this webinar and numerous others posted on our site at royseuniversity.com. It will also be on the Royse Law YouTube site. It will be available for download as a podcast in the Apple Store. And if there are slides, you may find them on SlideShare on Royse University. So with that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to give our panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves. I want to remind the attendees that we have a dialog box on the right-hand part of your screen. And in that dialog box, if you have questions for our panelists, you should go ahead and type them in, and we'll go ahead and take them throughout the presentation. And if we can't get to them, for them, and the panelists will follow up with you directly. So with that, again, I'd like to ask the panelists to go ahead and introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll go into questions. Why don't we start with you, Dana?
Okay. Hi, I'm Dana Loberg, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of MovieLaLa. And the idea behind MovieLaLa is we wanted to build the best mobile app for the movie category. When we look at the existing mobile apps in movies, no one has really integrated that social layer on top of movies and movie-going, as well as the personalization and curation that people are expecting out of mobile apps today. So if you want to skip to the next slide, you can see that the Hollywood feed is based on movie stars and directors that you follow. So now when you open up MovieLaLa, you'll see upcoming movies that you're related to and that you're most likely to like because, like I said, in the mobile experience, it's much different than the web. The app should know a little bit more about you. It should be personalized. And we really want to make it convenient for people to find and discover movies more easily. If you want to skip to the next slide, you can see it's like a very clean design if you were to like to envision an IMDb 2.0. You can see how you can make comments, you can engage with your friends. If you go to the next slide, you'll have your own like personal movie profile. Because when you look at all the social categories for existing platforms, LinkedIn for business, Facebook for universities, and Spotify for music, social has really changed the way that people engage with content and engage with each other. You can go to the next slide. This is like your own personal movie profile. You can find friends, you can add friends, you can follow them, and the idea is you can actually chat with your friends through the app now. We feel like there's a cumbersome experience when you are deciding what movie you want to go to on existing websites. Really, there's no way to meet new friends around movies or chat with friends and decide which film to go on together. So we really wanted to incorporate and streamline the whole process from discovery to chatting with friends, meeting new people, and purchasing tickets. You can go to the next slide. This is like the ability to chat through the app, and really the important part is adding in that social element so that this is the way millennials and teenagers are engaging with each other, which is always on mobile and on the go. So that's kind of why we decided to build MovieLaLa and really improve the consumer experience around film. I think that's it. So the last slide is the data and analytics component. Obviously, studios are looking for better data around who's engaging with their content, and they also want to optimize and bring more virality around it. And now in a mobile app, you can go directly to the end user and engage with people who are related to the film. So it's cheaper for the studios, it's direct access to the end user, and you can really customize the experience for everyone so that you don't have to do the traditional marketing of spray and pray around television commercials and billboards. And in mobile, you can really more efficiently and effectively get in front of the people that are interested in receiving that content. I think that's it.
Okay, Dana, is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Denise, would you like to tell us a little bit about Scripted?
Sure. So I'm Denise Hewett. I'm the founder of Scripted. We'll be launching beta in the next couple of weeks. Super exciting. Ultimately, I'm a former producer, and the reason I started Scripted was because Hollywood obviously is a very closed-door space, and I felt like we were missing out on a lot of great talent and a lot of great content. I really believe in the power of transparency in Hollywood, and I think that has been something that obviously is an old guard system that people have been very slow to kind of decide to do. So we're kind of, through Scripted, the idea is we have a platform in which unrepresented, represented writers can put up their work, and so the idea is that we're like a one-stop shop for content across the board for scripts for Hollywood, because believe it or not, a singular database does not exist. And then we can have the public interact with that content. So the idea is that we create script culture like we've created book culture. We start to have people reading scripts. I think it's an old myth that the idea that people can't read scripts prior to a movie release I think was created by Hollywood, and I think that we can see through the power of books that go to box office, the power of having an audience base and having people that are being able to interact with content during production, that it pays off in the box office. So we want to create that environment and new ecosystem for writers to start having people engage with their work, and then that way we really can see what's hitting the zeitgeist, and we can help Hollywood make educated script buys and bets to really start creating more global commercial success, and also seeing different types of content, because I believe that there are audience bases in a number of areas in which we're not seeing a lot of content being made. And I think with a site like Scripted, we can start to prove that there are these amazing audience bases for these amazing stories and start kind of showing our world as it exists.
Okay. All right, Lucas is having a little trouble with audio, so while we're working on that, I think I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into a few questions here. And you know, this is somewhat of a new topic for us, certainly for the webinars, and I think it'd be good just to take a big step back and maybe describe for us what is this new area of film tech, and what is the Silicon Valley's role in this? Do you have an opinion on that, Denise or Dana?
Yeah, no, I'm here in Silicon Valley. I'm born and raised in Los Angeles. And it's interesting just being raised in LA and around entertainment and then now working in tech and up north. I definitely see more collaboration and convergence of the two. I think there's obviously a lot of interest down in LA to use better technologies that are more efficient in getting distribution of, you know, their content, because in LA they're creating the best content in the world. These are all like global, I'm just speaking movies and television, but they know that Silicon Valley has been known for building the pipeline to distribute all their content. And when you look at Netflix and Hulu and Amazon, these companies have really expanded the role of the studios and the content creators. And I just see now and going forward the two trying to work together even closely, because they can't live without each other. And so it's a really interesting time in general to see them collaborating, has been my experience.
Yeah, I think we're at the dawn of like what is brand new, right? Entertainment tech is just starting. A year ago, anyone that would have come to LA, I'm based in LA, and been like, oh, we have this thing. It's no one wanted to hear it. I think based on the past year and what's happened in entertainment over the past year, obviously the younger audience ingest content completely differently than an older audience. And so we have to find a way to kind of fuse the two audiences. And I think people are starting to listen, are starting to be open to innovation. I think we also have to remember, though, that entertainment is a creative industry, and I think that tech plays a part, but I also think that, you know, the worry I think a lot of people feel in that kind of creative space is that you can't let data dictate the creation. They have to work hand in hand, right? As Netflix says, it's like 70% algorithm, 30% curation. Because at the end of the day, you have to make content that you believe in and that you think is, you know, tells a great story, in addition to having like data back that up.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that when I've been working closely with the studios, I definitely am seeing an openness and more experimentation when it comes to trying new technologies. I know there's a lot of resistance and fear when it comes to technology because it's not their core competency, right? Like Denise was saying, they are meant to create and produce, and technology is not really in their DNA. So in the past year, I've definitely seen a transition happening where they're trying to experiment, they're trying new things, they want to adapt, they want to learn. These are very smart people in the studios and down in LA. So, and I'm also noticing a transition internally when it comes to digital in the major studios. There's some up-and-coming new studios that I think they started more in the indie film market and had to be a little bit more tech-savvy because they had less of a budget in marketing films. And those are slowly rising and becoming what I think potentially in the near future will be like the future of studios, which is a little bit more data-driven and I don't know, more receptive to using technology.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's like the ability to pivot. Like, I know a lot of these bigger corporations and studios, it's the idea that it's like a bureaucracy. It's very hard to make change when there's a lot of channels to get approval to go through. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing that I emphasize to everyone in the industry is just like the ability to move swiftly and be able to pivot, because that younger audience, that digital audience, moves at a very rapid pace.
Okay. Well, let's shift gears here a little bit. Since we're here in Silicon Valley and working with a lot of startup companies, and this might be one for Dana more, but can you tell me a little bit about what's the investment climate like for this? What's the appetite here? Is this something that's fundable, do you think, this sort of sector?
It's interesting. I remember when I first was raising money about like a year and a half, 2 years ago, it was pretty difficult. In Silicon Valley, I think people got burned in the past when it comes to anything entertainment related. And so there's been, I wouldn't say any open arms when it comes to building something in the media or entertainment space. And I think there's a few isolated people who have, some people have a past in Hollywood that are now living in Silicon Valley and are very anti-entertainment. But there's not even that many in the media entertainment world in Silicon Valley, so they don't really even understand it. Like, I remember people would ask me, like, who goes to movies anymore, right? Like, because like up north, people are on their Flipboard, on their iPad, and I don't think they even, pass a theater, nor do they think about it. But in every other part of the U.S., and especially in the global scheme, like, movies and film is huge. And it was kind of, I would have to go through the education of like 220 million people a year in the United States go to films. Like, on average, it's 6 movies a year. Like, it's a lot of film, and people are consuming it. So I think that they understand that there's a problem when it comes to the efficiency and the data and the real-time analytics in the studio marketing. But as a whole, in Silicon Valley, I feel the support behind a startup in entertainment is like, it's been difficult. I wouldn't say it's the easiest. It's not trending on the wearables. It's not, going into healthcare. There's a lot of, obviously, bigger trends happening in the startup space that aren't at all focused in entertainment, and there aren't even that many in this category.
There's so few.
Shocking. Yeah, and it's a huge category. So
I think we're at the beginning of what's going to be a very trendy time. If you looked at like Variety last month, the whole issue is about how Hollywood is broken. I think that, it's about to start. I think there's a few of us that have been in the space for a minute that are beginning to do it, but I have found, like, in terms of like when I went to Silicon Valley to raise money, the response across the board was like, well, entertainment's not my space. And my response was, well, it's no one's space. It's no one's space right now. Which is a very exciting place to be, I would think, as an investor, because I think the upside is huge. You're dealing with an undersaturated marketplace. I have found New York to be the most receptive, to be honest, in terms of like what entertainment to them and kind of jumping on that bandwagon. And even LA, because it's a new startup culture, I think they play a little safe. They play more in like the late seed game.
Okay,
Yeah.
We're starting to get some questions from the audience, so I'm going to go ahead and take them. Here's kind of a big one. It's how, this is a broad topic, but how can Hollywood benefit Silicon Valley or benefit from Silicon Valley? I think it's probably the real question, and vice versa. Probably a question here about how these two sectors and industries can collaborate. Any thoughts on that?
I just think initially, it's interesting. It's, there's enterprise. To me, the enterprises down in LA are the major studios, the Disneys, the Warner Brothers, the Sonys. And up north, it's like Salesforce, Oracle, right? They're like software services. And I think like the first step into getting into new technologies is really the easiest is to work with startups. Like, we're usually pretty easy to work with, and we're cheap because, we're trying to build a client base.
Sorry. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I would say for any major companies that are looking to get more involved with technology in Silicon Valley would be really seeking out some startups that are trying to innovate in the space or industry that they're in. Bring them in, meet with them, learn what they're doing, and like maybe do a test trial with them or work with them a bit. I would say, I don't know who the question is from or what industry they're from, but I feel there's a lot of ways that they can get more involved with Silicon Valley and tech just by meeting with people and startups in that space that are trying to innovate.
Okay, any other thoughts on that? Okay, well, if not, we've got another question. We've got another question from a panelist that is a little more direct and I guess a little bit more specific. This is somebody who has a post-production and visual effects company in Los Angeles, and they're expanding into San Francisco and the tech industry. And they're asking, what's the best way to meet clients, develop connections, meet animators and filmmakers, find clients, things like that. Do you have any suggestions where they can begin?
Yeah, I mean, I think, networking, going to events. I mean, I found when I first moved to LA from New York, it was, how I really met a lot of people here was, going to different kind of industry-related events, especially if you're going to be opening in San Francisco. I imagine that, because the film space is a lot smaller there, that it's probably a lot easier to network and kind of meet people there. I also think if you're dealing with post and visual effects, I think they should get in touch with VR people. That's obviously a big market in the Silicon Valley and right in their wheelhouse, so that could be a really easy way to kind of fuse the two.
Yeah, I was just actually recently with Jaunt, J-A-U-N-T, and they're, virtual reality content creators here in the Valley. They're in Palo Alto. And I think beyond obviously trying to attend events that are around the entertainment, film, tech arena, which there aren't too many, you can do big events like Startup Grind, but also I would go through LinkedIn. I feel when I started doing MovieLaLa and I didn't know anybody, I would go through LinkedIn. You should search, the industrial lights and Lucasfilm type of people and try to get coffee with them and meet with them, and that will kind of like jumpstart your networking around that space.
Okay. So a few more questions. Let's see here. So here we have a filmmaker who lives here in Silicon Valley, and they say it seems like the studios, the ad agencies, and the brands all work together, or they work with each other directly or through creative studios. And they're wondering how a smaller startup or indie producer can break into the ecosystem. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Obviously, I get where you're coming from. It's one of the major issues in terms of we're missing out on really great talent. We're missing out on really great voices. So that's exactly what Script is aiming to do, is to help a lot of those scripts get visibility, to get made. I think there's a lot. I don't know if you guys are aware of Seed and Spark. Seed and Spark is another entertainment tech company my friend runs. It's a crowdfunding platform to basically help filmmakers create sustainable businesses outside of Hollywood. And it becomes a great space where everything, they now have distribution on iTunes and a few other things, so you're actually really seeing the impact of your work beyond just the crowdfunding platform, and then you can reach a larger audience. I think, building the biggest thing you can do as an independent filmmaker is build your audience base. Like with companies like Tug, where you can then distribute your movie in a theater, have people go see it. There's all these ways now to create a system, separate from the festival route, in which people are engaging with your content and watching it.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Just try to build the audience on your own.
Yeah, I understand. So, so maybe you can offer some. We've got a couple of questions here, wondering what the future is, what's hot right now, what are the technologies that people might want to be looking at right now and should be getting into. Do you have any thoughts on that?
And as far as what technologies to get into, other startups in this space?
What's hot? Yeah, what's hot? I mean, a lot of our audience tend to be entrepreneurs and technology people, and we know there's a lot going on. I mean, I've heard about digital cameras, that are mobile, so you can film mobile. That's an area. I know there's technologies for watching movies on your phone, or maybe even making movies with your phone, projecting movies from any surface. There's a lot out there, and I know you, Dana, for example, are really creating you're right at the frontier of social media and Hollywood as well. If you had somebody had to ask you, a budding entrepreneur, as to where there's real opportunity, what might you tell them?
I think there's a few areas, obviously, like the virtual reality is really hot right now. It's obviously premature, so they're still building new technologies to make it better, but they've all raised around from $200 to $500 million in this space, and it's all about using your phone to create a more in-depth experience, so you don't have to go to a concert anymore. You can just watch it, obviously, from your home. That's a tough question. Like, I feel as an entrepreneur, you know, the trends come and go, and you know, wearables is super hot right now. Apple's coming out in April with their new watch. They've actually been, you know, pushing us to do an app on the watch because I guess they're assuming maybe people, that'll be another next leap to where people are wearing stuff that makes their life more convenient with technology and connection. You know, like a year or two ago, it was always big data, and that's kind of, you know, data is always going to be an important part of most startups now that technology is affordable, and you can really build a database in the back end for most startups. But I don't know, like I mean, I just think the virtual reality world is kind of in this space that's getting hotter, but it's still premature and early. So I think that's all I would say for now.
I think we're going to start to see a further unbundling of services. I think that is where entertainment is headed. I think there's a lot of things within that space that can be fixed and like worked upon. There's a lot of like complex layered issues in this industry, and if someone really gets to know it intimately, there's so many ways to fix issues and really create a better ecosystem. And so I think, you know, people are to the space, it's like really get to know it and figure out how you can solve a problem.
Okay. You know, following up on that question, somebody asked, you know, what would you say are the parts of Hollywood that might be most receptive to startups? And further to that, what's the best way to start those relationships? And you know, and as somebody, as a lawyer who's opened an office down there, I can tell you I understand the frustration. It's kind of a tough nut to crack, isn't it? It's a little tough to get into that industry in any business, and I would expect that's probably true for a technology startup. Any advice for some of our folks?
But isn't it kind of the same as tech? That's what I liken it to. I think Hollywood and tech are very similar industries. They're both kind of tough. They're both kind of mean. And they're both kind of elitist. And I think it is, hopefully we can democratize that and equalize the space over the next 5 to 10 years. But I think it's just a lot of time. Hollywood's big on paying your dues. So Hollywood's big on, you know, like networking, working relationships, and that's what it is very much about right now. And so I think the more knowledgeable you are about the industry, and the more kind of, you know, stuff that you can bring to the table in a meeting, because if you go into a meeting and you don't know anything about the space, they're probably not going to sit with you and talk forever, just because unfortunately that's the climate. But if you come in and you know a ton about the space and you have some really interesting ideas, they will give you a ton of time.
Yeah, and I'd have to say that when it comes to Hollywood, what's different, I think, than Silicon Valley is that you have to constantly be on top of them, pinging them, emailing, you know, like get in front of them multiple times. It's not, in Silicon Valley, I feel like everyone's a little bit faster. Like you do a meeting and things get done, versus in Hollywood, you have to really build that relationship. It's more on trust and gut feeling, because that's how the industry works. It's all about like what you're feeling in your gut about the person, and in Hollywood. So you just have to be, it's like a lot of persistence. I think what Denise was saying, which is true, is that they're both, you know, difficult ecosystems to maneuver around, and it takes persistence, it takes knowledge of the space, really kind of being an industry thought leader so that they feel like you're bringing something to them that's special and unique. Because in Hollywood, it's also there's a lot of yeses, but when it comes to activation, it seems to take a lot of time. So yeah, you just have to you know, pitch it like it's something special for them, and no one else is getting it. I mean, there's like many ways to like try to break into the Hollywood, but that's like what I would say is just you have to really learn the language and the storytelling that they're even used to, and kind of try to speak their language down in Hollywood to try to break in and get some work done there.
Okay, thanks. By the way, we have Lucas here now. So Lucas, I want to welcome you. You want to say a few words about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm a reporter I write principally about entertainment and media businesses with a focus on the way in which technology is forcing those businesses to adapt, and at the same time that those businesses are kind of co-opting some new new technology companies and whatever to further their own ends. My technological prowess is minimal, as evidenced by the half an hour it took me to connect to a go-to meeting. But I principally write about, guys like both Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, and then what traditional TV and film companies, Universal, Warner Brothers, etc.
Okay. So, Lucas, we've been talking here, we've been having a discussion about that intersection between Hollywood and Silicon Valley, and and I started out the discussion with a question about all the hype, or all the, I guess, noise we've been hearing recently about whether Hollywood is going to be replaced by Silicon Valley, whether it's all going to be about technology now and less about where the content comes from. I mean, you must see some trends in this industry. Do you have a view of that? I mean, I'm thinking about Netflix, of course, and what Amazon tried to do. Is there a revolution going on, a technology and business revolution, or do we really need Hollywood content forever?
I mean, there are changes in the way that people are producing and distributing and marketing video, but I think it's pretty short-sighted to think that Hollywood's just going to go away, in part because a lot of the companies that have tried to break into it have failed. Microsoft's Xbox Studios project blew up in its face, and those that have succeeded so far, like Netflix and Amazon starting to, aren't really that different from Hollywood. I mean, there's some technological basis to what they do, but Netflix turned into this company that everyone is obsessed with by convincing, the top Hollywood talent to work with them. So there's a huge element of Hollywood to what they do. Ted Sarandos, who's in charge of all the shows that they do, lives in Los Angeles, started in the video store. I mean, it's not like this is some tech company that came in and showed Hollywood how to do business. It's a company that matched what Hollywood does best, which is the great storytelling, with a new means of releasing that content that that got people excited. And now that most Hollywood companies are trying to replicate, HBO, which for a while Netflix was trying to copy, is now trying to copy Netflix, but neither of those companies are going anywhere because its brand is very strong. Whereas as YouTube, a company that, to use a token word, disrupted Hollywood, has struggled mightily to produce video of its own because it doesn't have that same DNA that Netflix does.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is to enter the content space and not understand how to make great content is extremely challenging. There's a reason we have directors and writers and creators is because they understand something about telling a story that I think technology has a way to inform, but it can't dictate. And I think that's really, really the key, is that telling a really great story and hitting the zeitgeist and making a movie that sells $800 million worldwide is really hard. It's not if it was that easy, everyone would be doing it.
Okay. Let me ask another one. In kind of reviewing some of the, what's out there on the web in preparation for this webinar, I kept coming across this concept that the movie industry is dying. And I understand that the box office sales have been down recently. Or have they? And you guys sort of have your pulse on the industry. Is that true? Maybe we shouldn't even call this film tech. Maybe we should call it entertainment tech instead. Is that true? Is the film industry in decline?
No. So last year, independent cinema did better than independent cinema has done in the past couple of years. So it tells you the climate's changing. I think what people had anticipated to be really big, obviously there's movies that do really well in China that don't do well nationally. And so it's adapting to a marketplace where we can either bridge global content with national content, or it's focusing on different types of stories. And I think that it's just the way that people are ingesting movies is not the way that they used to. And so that the reaction to that is like, okay, we're dying, but no, we're just have to adapt and kind of create different types of films to match our audience base.
And also when it comes to the film, like movie going in the United States, it's one of the largest markets. Like when you compare movie going to concerts or even sports games, it's like 10x whatever all the other activities combined make. And so because the U.S. it's been the film going, the theaters have been here for a long time, it's a very saturated market. Like it can't go up any higher. There's 220 million people a year that are going to the theaters and watching movies. And so it has to at least at some point plateau, if not decrease a little, because of the existence and the span of time that it's dominated the activities of all of us, and obviously things are changing when it comes to our consumption. But in global, in developing countries, the first thing people spend on is movies. It's actually like a major activity in other countries. So like Denise is saying, like there are, the industry is looking outside the U.S. to grow and expand, which is obviously the globalization of the world and where entertainment is seeing their future. But it's not dying by any means, and it's here to stay. Like it's not like it's like Sony's going to disappear tomorrow and never make movies. Movies is still a very huge global phenomena and a major activity for all the countries. And it's just when it comes to the United States, it's been around for so long, and the theaters, are still innovating now. They're building new seats. They're doing the whole deluxe like food and drinking, and they're adopting to trying to make the experience better for people to compete with obviously the streaming. So I think that's evolving as well.
Yeah, and I understand, following up on that, in some other countries they've got things like interactive movies now, or maybe they have that in this country as well, where you actually interact with the film itself. And I've even heard of something called 4D technology, where the movies have physical effects, like drops of water or blowing wind or things like that. So there's certainly a lot of new creative ideas going on. To shift gears a little bit, let's talk about the TV space. So we have a question coming in. Say, are there any thoughts on the television market itself, and how does it compare? How does what's going on in the film industry compare to what's going on with just in television or other media for that matter?
I think TV is incredibly exciting. I mean, I kind of liken online content, I call it TV. I think they're all kind of the same. I think we have like more outlets than ever for that content. So it's really, really an exciting time. It's about getting the best content to those screens. But I mean, what I've always been fascinated about TV versus movies is that, a movie is finite, and a TV allows you to like grow a character and get to know a character over like a long period of time. And obviously the way that people binge watch content, that's clearly something that is exciting to them. So I think we're going to see kind of more of that. I mean, I think like these epic, long series, whether it's miniseries or, we're doing like a 7-series show, and knowing when to cap a season is really important, because now that we don't rely on rating systems as much, or, having to like renew, it's like if you just know what your story is, 7-season long story, end it, you can like create these really like kind of golden shows for all time.
Lucas, do you have any thoughts on that? I know you cover television. A lot going on in the TV world in terms of...
Broadly on the state of television, I mean, it's the single most lucrative business in all of media. It's what every tech company is trying to take money away from. If you talk to the folks at Google, what YouTube wants is to take advertising revenue away from cable TV. If you talk to Facebook, what they want is to take advertising revenue away from television. If you talk to Snapchat, what they'll eventually want to do is, and what they're trying to do right now, is move some money from cable TV over to their platform. And what's most interesting is at the same time they're trying to convince the people who they're trying to kind of grab some money away from to spend money on them. So it's a very bizarre dynamic between these two companies. And I mean, the TV industry is still a multi-billion-dollar business. They are now dealing with steady declines in viewership. and advertising money has started to move from TV online. The big question facing these guys is, how are they going to manage that transition? Are they going to make it? Some of these channels and shows are even bigger online than they are on TV. So how are you going to make money off of that? And then there are others that have managed to stay on television because of the way that the cable bundle works, and some of those channels and shows will disappear.
Yeah, interesting. And the online world is a whole world in itself, isn't it? With a different model and different sorts of, I understand that there are people on YouTube that have millions and millions of followers now, and I suspect that there are people trying to figure out how to monetize that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube is, go ahead.
Lucas, do you have a thought?
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, YouTube has created some of, has served as a place for people who wanted to be be celebrities, make it in Hollywood, to do so on their own without having to go through the traditional system, and now have millions of followers that make them very valuable to Fortune 500 companies who want to advertise their products. What you're seeing with a lot of those stars now is that they want to cross over into quote-unquote traditional media so that they can be everywhere, and some of that is because the money that they can get paid for being in a movie or being in a TV show still surpasses what they can make online.
Yeah. Denise, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I worked at a multi-channel network, digital one, so I understand that space quite well. And I think it's interesting because I think what's hard about that space is that YouTube has figured out how to monetize YouTube, and the talent has figured out how to monetize YouTube. But then beyond that, I think there's a question of how does everyone else profit off what YouTube is doing? And I think that multi-channel networks have started to kind of crack that nut, but I think there's still kind of a window of like it's not fully figured out yet. And I think that, as we see like the first generation YouTube stars, we move into second generation YouTube stars, it'll be interesting to see who really crosses over, because so far it's been very few who've crossed into the traditional space. So despite having millions of followers and fans, for some reason there's still a little bit of a disconnect in the traditional space with them.
Okay, here's kind of an interesting question. We're getting, I see a theme in the questions that we're getting, and this one has to do with where a person ought to locate or where they ought to be. And I know, Dana, for example, I think you have offices both here in Silicon Valley and in Hollywood. If somebody wants to get into the space, I mean, do they need to be here in the Valley, and do they need to be in Hollywood? And Denise, I'm not sure where you're at.
I'm in LA.
You're in LA. Well. So you've opted not to have a Silicon Valley office?
Yeah. I mean, I came from New York. I came from entertainment in New York and moved to LA to produce out here. And for me, I see myself more as an entertainment company, and yes, tech's a component, but what we're doing is I work with creators. I work with creators across the board, and the majority of creators are based in LA or New York.
And I am innovating and building new technologies around the video space, specifically for trailers. So the engineers are up north for me, and my whole team is pretty much all engineers, iOS, backend, data scientists. So I chose to live in Silicon Valley so that I could be closer to the engineered talent, and also I just get a little bit nervous because LA is so concentrated in the entertainment and the hype, like it can be kind of you can get kind of swept into the hype of like, oh, we're working on this movie and that movie for my technical team, and I'd rather keep them focused and up north where they're not part of the glory of working in entertainment, I guess.
Okay, well, it sounds like there's some benefit in having a foot in both places. A couple of questions that are coming in, and we're getting lots of questions from this audience. I can see there's a big FilmTech community here in LA. One of you had mentioned the unbundling that's going on in the business, and somebody asked whether that opens the door even more to content creators. And then we got some questions around virtual reality, whether that's going to be the next robust content category. like apps and YouTube channels and things like that. So any thoughts on either of those comments?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about virtual reality is I think obviously this year, just by sheer force, people are making it happen. I think everywhere that I've been in the past 2 months, there's been a VR pop-up setup. So clearly they want a presence, they're going to make it happen. I think what's interesting about it is that it has the potential initially to feel like what IMAX felt like, which is a little bit gimmicky. And I think it's finding a way to make it feel like an organic content experience. And not like this like special thing that you do. And so I think that's going to kind of be the line they have to walk. But I think you've also seen like immersive theater experiences are incredibly popular in New York and London and all these places. And I think virtual reality has a chance to be like a real immersive experience and take movies to the next level. So those are my thoughts on that.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I mean, virtual reality is something that a lot of people are playing with. It's just unclear what the business is going to be or how it's really going to work. You know, I've played around with a couple of the ones that they've created, and they're great. But one, nobody knows if it'll work for something long form. They think it will, but they're not sure. And two, there's some disagreement as to whether it's just something that you're fun to do to help market your movie or TV show or whatever it is, or whether we're going to get to a point where it'll be a real business that complements the core part of the entertainment industry. You know, there's some studios that see it being, you know, a perfect companion to a movie where you can sell it in the home entertainment window, which is where, you know, where DVDs and Netflix and all that. But the big question for a lot of people is, will there be wide enough adoption of the glasses? You know, there were some people who were convinced that Google Glass is going to be the next big thing, and nobody wears Google Glass. Virtual reality, I think, has a better shot than Glass did. But you know, I don't know anyone who's carrying a VR headset around with them yet, and most of them are Android, and the kinds of people who might splurge on something like this that will get expensive and have some cachet tend to be iPhone people. So we'll see.
And also, I think that when it comes to the VR world, it's so early. Like, they don't have any content right now because they still are developing the cameras and the production tools to actually make the content for virtual reality. So, like, it's very limited. Like, when I went to the content maker of virtual reality yesterday, they only had like 12 pieces of content in like 5 to 10 minute snippets, very short, mostly like concert and outdoor driven. You know, and you maybe like GoPro will probably participate and help in building better cameras and stuff to build this 360-degree experience. But it's still so early. And obviously there needs to be good content in order for people to actually put the glasses on and have this experience. And even when I go to meetings and people aren't even sure where the virtual world lies, like, I don't think it's going to replace movies. I think there'll be movies that you can buy and purchase and then you can watch it. But it's a very isolating experience. It's kind of more like gaming, like when you sit in front of a video game for hours. That's kind of where I see the virtual reality experience kind of coming into play. And I think it will even change the gaming world more so than necessarily like quote-unquote entertainment, but I think there's a crossover in both. But it's just honestly like way premature because I haven't even seen too much content in this space to say like, oh yeah, this is going to disrupt this industry, and it's, you know, it's still like so early.
Okay. Thank you for that. You know, I noticed, I don't know if you follow drones very much, but about a week ago, the FAA released some new proposed regulations on the use of drones, which is somewhat controversial. And it just so happens that this week I noticed that there's a Y Combinator company that has come out with a drone that they're using for dollies for filmmakers. And of course, I'm just wondering if any of you have any comments on whether, you know, whether there's a big market for, because there's a lot of drone companies. I've seen a lot of them around here. is this a potential market for our drone companies? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think to find new ways to film scenes, like this is what, DPs geek out on, right? Is like finding new ways to get great light and great angles and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I think there's a huge marketplace in the hardware space. I mean, obviously, like we have great cameras like Reds and we have Phantoms and we have all these kind of cool things. But I think, to keep improving hardware in that space is really important.
Okay. All right. Well, we've got about 5 minutes left, so I think I'm going to ask our panelists if they could maybe get out their crystal ball and tell us what they think the future is going to hold for film tech, both in terms of the new technologies, the areas that will be hot, what will happen with the industry, how the business model might change, whether the geographical focus of this industry might move a little north, like some people think it will. So, Lucas, do you want to go first? Your views on where this industry is going?
You prefer on film than other aspects, I assume?
On film, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
entertainment generally. Let's say entertainment generally.
Well, look, on the film side embraced digital distribution faster in many ways than television did. You could buy movies via video on demand, things like that, pretty early on, and they got these studios good deals with Netflix to put their movies on there and all that. But nothing has really changed about the principal way that the biggest movies are released, which is that they're put in theaters first, and that's where they have to be for several months, and then eventually you can watch them somewhere else. The big question that people have is, at any point, will that change, and will the entry of Amazon and Netflix into the market signify some broader shift? I don't have the answer to that question, but what they are trying to do is to release movies, on Netflix, on Amazon, either concurrent to a film's release in theaters or just after. Right now, it doesn't look like movie theaters have bought on. They're clinging to this old model, but there would seem to be some potential in this, with the right kind of movie to sell it online and in theaters at the same time, and that would be a major change. The other one that I know a lot of people in Hollywood would like to see change, and I just don't know if movie theaters are going to get on board, is more flexible ticketing and pricing. Where if there's a movie that clearly a lot of people want to see, you all of a sudden change it from showing it on 3 screens, changing to showing it on 5 or 6, and showing it at different times, making it so that people are not beholden to show up at a theater at 7:10 for a particular movie and can see it when it works in their schedule. It seems like if TV is being changed such that almost everything is going to be on demand, there should be some movement to do so in film as well. Whether these theater owners and studios are going to let that happen remains to be seen, but that's just what I think the consumer wants.
Okay. Denise, your thoughts?
I certainly hope, and I think this is where we're going, that I think we're going to see hopefully more diverse content. I think, we obviously have a massive diverse population in this country and abroad, and I think the more that we start showing our world as it exists, we'll see more commercial success, and that is something I strongly, strongly believe in, and I think, we can see already with the Oscars and things like that, they're outdated, and the stuff that's getting, featured and credited is not necessarily the best content, and I think we have to start to equalize the space so we can really start to create more success.
Okay, thank you. Dana?
Yeah, so interesting about kind of what Lucas was saying. I am really interested eventually in, I think things will continue to go mobile as far as like discovering of content, whether it's through the social platforms, and I think that when it comes to dynamic ticketing, I'm super interested in that, in the fact that when it comes to the movie industry, I see that for every other industry, there's dynamic ticketing, whether you're buying a ticket for an airline, and I think in the film it would be pretty cool if, the fee for buying a ticket on mobile is the same as buying a ticket in the theater, and beyond that, based on the success of the film is the price of the ticket. And obviously, like, weekdays might be a little cheaper because there's less people going to the movies, and it's all based on supply and demand. And I think that with technology comes the flattening of the world, where there's more power to the consumer, and they can choose to stay at home and stream it, or they can choose to have a bigger, better experience in the theater. And all of these are going to, it just gives us as entertainment fans more options. And I think that, people will still continue to want the big display in the theater with friends as a social activity. I don't see that changing, but I do think that the cinemas will have to improve the experience, whether it's through food and drink or bigger, better seats, and make it maybe, more deluxe. And then obviously the ticketing, the dynamic ticketing will also help make it affordable for some people during weekdays to, maybe to get some discounts to drive more people to go out. But that's pretty much my predictions, I guess.
Okay, well, thank you, Dana. So I want to remind everybody that that we have a Silicon Valley FilmTech group here, and I encourage you all to join so you can stay abreast of some of our upcoming developments and events. In particular, we're going to be at the Carmel International Film Festival in October. We'll have a demo room down there with possibly some presentations. And in conjunction with a Film Angels pitch presentation, probably. If you're tweeting, tweet this hashtag #SVFilmTech. And again, this is part of a web series. You'll be able to find them all at royseuniversity.com and the Royse Law YouTube site, speaking of FilmTech, as well as in the Apple Download Store. So with that, I want to thank our panelists for being here and thank our attendees. This is maybe the most questions I think I've gotten from attendees in a long time. So there's obviously a lot of interest in this. There's a big community, and it seems that people are looking for a group like Silicon Valley FilmTech and the FilmTech Meetup in order to come together and collaborate and find out where those opportunities are. So once again, thank you attendees and thank you panelists, and we're going to now conclude the webinar.